Okay, morning, and thank you for joining me for the second part of maximising the value of your assortment. So, the first session that we did was really an introduction to inventory optimization, and today we're going to be talking more about the value of your assortments. So, I spend most of my days visiting businesses and not quite seeing this picture, but most warehouses I go to are full. Companies are holding too much stock, and I guess trying to work out what stock to have, how much to have of what product, and seeing a warehouse this full and still not being able to fulfill customer demand is frustrating. And ultimately, this is kind of what you're faced with following that. So, whether it comes from the sales staff or whether it comes from your customers, you've got people coming to you to say, "Well, it's not really good enough. I wanted this product now, or today, or tomorrow," as we have demanding customers, and you're not able to fulfill what I need. So, you end up with unhappy customers. Internally, as a business, you also end up with pressure financially because we're holding too much stock. We don't have the money to invest in the stock that we do need, and it puts you in a really tough position. So I guess some of these areas you'll find as familiar. Spiraling SKU count. A couple of years ago, more and more businesses I was visiting were talking about introducing new product lines, maybe products that were enhancing their range or adding to their additional ranges, so that they could almost be this Amazon one-stop shop and give their customers kind of one place to go to buy everything they need. The problem with that is that the SKU codes, the number of items that we were holding, just expanded and became unmanageable. Along with that, it meant that we had so much money invested in stock that we were unable to do other things. It ended up meaning that we weren't able to buy as much of the stock that we actually needed because of the money we had invested in other products. We've got high levels of excess stock, and this is kind of the result of some of the things that maybe we've done over the last few years, where we've introduced new product. Maybe we've got huge MOQs from the Far East, and it means that we've got levels of stock that are just uncontrollable. Following on from this, the big frustration is that we've got these massive levels of stock, but we're still not living up to our customers' expectations and delivering on the service level that we've promised. So we end up potentially, rather than ordering from the Far East the product that we need at the price that we want to pay, we end up maybe buying that product in the UK and paying more than we want to for it. But also, it means on those products that we're not shifting, we end up reducing the price of them to sell them, and therefore the margins aren't what we need them to be. So internally, how does this affect you as a business? I guess the first area that I would look at is the sales staff lose confidence that when they go out to sell, the product that they're selling is going to be available. They put pressure on the operations team and the purchasing team to say, look, this is the product that I need. Please ensure that we actually have it when it comes to me selling it, because the customer isn't going to be happy if we can't fulfill the order. And then on the financial side, we're saying, well, we've got this much stock. How can we have that much money tied up in stock and still not be delivering? And then on the far side, we've got our customers who are then disappointed because the salesperson has promised to deliver and we failed to. So some of the pain points that we're faced with around this are that, or some of the areas that we discuss is, as a team, this is the way that we've always done it. So as much as we all have experts in what we do in our businesses, sometimes it's not always the right way to do it. Just because it's the way we've always done it, sometimes things need to be reviewed. We can't sell that because there's no article number. I think we've all got SKUs in our warehouses where product that we've bought has no SKU code. Maybe it's changed as a product, so we bought it as one, it's now something else. And there is stock within our warehouses that is unsaleable, so we need to work out how we manage that. This one's a little bit, this is what I hear, is that sales sell exactly the articles we have in stock when we all know they probably don't. If it's easier, then they'll find a product from somewhere and tell you to buy that product, even though we may have something similar ranged already. It may even be the same product, and we're just buying something that we've already got. And then sales are definitely going to win an order. So going forward, I understand that many businesses will have to tender for business in advance and will not necessarily have a full review and lead time to get that product in. So sometimes we have to take that calculated risk that if we win this, we need to hold this much stock, and therefore let's ensure that we've actually got it to fulfill the order if we do get it. The reality is that 35% of obsolete stock stems from that first order. So when we're looking to introduce a new line, let's use everything we possibly have to ensure that that item is going to be a success. 95% of the profit in our business comes from 10% or less than 10% of the range. So one of the things I'll talk about today is identifying that range of products and ensuring that that's where we spend our time and where we spend money. 60% of the suppliers produce less than 5% of turnover. So again, let's work out as one of the first steps the stocking and non-stocking policy on those products. If it's 60% of our suppliers only giving us less than 5% or 5% of our turnover, do we even want to stock that product? So the first part that we need to look at is the portfolio management. And the first part of that really is identifying, is this an item that I want to stock or not? And we'll all have different rules to whether this is an item that we decide to keep in or not. Some of the ones that we come across might be, well, is it a product I can source next day? If so, we don't really need to hold very much of it, if any of it. If it's a product that we sell less than 5 a year, do we stock it? Again, it's a decision, and a policy needs to be put in place by you as a business to identify whether this item is kept or not. We then need to look at how we introduce new products. When do we start to forecast new products? How do we look at the performance going forward? And do we even introduce that item? Then arguably the most important phase is the mature section of this, which is where we're looking to ensure that we have enough product to fulfill demand. And this is where we can start to look at the MOQs when we're buying from the supplier and the EOQs that we want to hold in our warehouse. The last part of this is the end of life. So how do we identify quick enough that this item is going to go end of life? How do we ensure that we use the stock effectively to ensure that when it is end of life that we don't end up with stock that we can't sell? How do we phase it out? So some of the questions that you might ask to decide what product is stocked versus non-stocked is, as I said before, the lead time from the supplier. Is it based on the number of units sold? Is it the importance of that customer? So I think we've all got customers that maybe only spend a few £100s a year with us, but we're holding products specifically for them. Is it worth doing that? Is that item profitable? Or does it enhance the product range? Do we have to have that product to be able to sell one of our more popular products? So what defines whether a new item should be kept in stock? When is an item introduced? Or when is it successfully introduced? And when is an item no longer new? Is it after 2 months or 3 months or 4 months? And then how do you forecast a new item? Many businesses I visit will say, well, it's purely a guess. We think that we'll sell 50 per month, and therefore we're going to forecast that we're going to sell 50 per month. And on some items, that's the only way you can do it. However, there are other ways that we can look at product groups and types to give us maybe an average or an idea of how that product is going to perform. Maybe it's superseding another product, and therefore we can carry across the forecast. The second part is the operational excellence. And this is really where, on this presentation, we're looking at the ABC analysis to work out, well, 80% of my turnover comes from 20% of my lines. On this first set of products, that's my biggest importance. That's what I need to focus most of my time on. Let's get those right, and that should look after the majority of the turnover. We can then see that our B lines take up the next kind of 30% and give us another kind of 15% on our turnover. But then our C lines are 5% of our turnover, but they're 50% of the lines that we're holding. We've then got the order line side, and it fits in pretty much exactly the same way. So we're seeing that 80% of our order lines are 20% of our products, the other 15% from our B lines, and then 50% from our C lines. The last part of this process is to optimize your stock and the ordering. So the first thing we need to do is focus on those A-line items and keep the service levels high. If we have promised our customers a particular service level, I would think on A-line items we should be looking to achieve 98% plus, but that will be gauged by you as a business. Reduce the lead times to be more agile. I guess if you can utilize MOQs and negotiate MOQs with your suppliers, that means that we can have regular product coming in rather than big chunks infrequently, then we can potentially mean that we'll have a bit more stability and a bit more harmony in that process. We can also look at whether we have multiple suppliers for a product, and therefore if the supplier has been unreliable and the product isn't going to get to you on time, at least we have a fallback on that product. And then we can try to negotiate the best prices that we can possibly get. I'm sure that's an area that we all focus on, but the idea is that we spend as much time as we can on those A-line items which are generating most of our margin, and then we can decide how we spend the rest of our time. So it might well be that rather than spending a lot of time on products that give you 5% of your turnover, we negotiate better prices, we negotiate MOQs. So on those B and C items, how do we avoid slow moving stock? I guess that comes back to the stocking, non-stocking decision at the start, or how much of that product do we actually buy? Minimum order quantities. On those B and C items, let's negotiate smaller MOQs. And if the sales are that low, maybe we look at sourcing that product elsewhere where we can get a smaller MOQ. If we can get contractual agreements, so those customers where they are only buying that product from you, let's set up a contract to ensure that if they are buying that product, that they're definitely going to buy it. And then if we are in a position where we have multiple locations, do we just hold the relevant stock in each location? Some other areas that we may want to consider are the economic order quantity. So how big is my warehouse? Bubble wrap can sometimes be cheap to buy and high margin. However, we wouldn't want to hold too much of it in our warehouse due to the amount of space it may take up. Identifying when an item is end of life quick enough. It's really, really difficult to see this manually, looking at spreadsheets, to see that a product's sales have dropped off over a period of time, and therefore it may well be that product is end of life, and we've just not noticed quick enough. And then utilising super sessions. So how do we take an item that's gone end of life or been replaced by another one? How do we use that information that we've got from the previous item? So just to kind of finish on this section, the idea of these slides today is really to get away from the frustration that the team has by not understanding where product is and how much we've got tied up in different sections, and try and bring a little bit more harmony to the team and make it so that everyone knows where you are with different product. If there's anything you want to discuss in more detail, please get in touch via email, via LinkedIn, or please give me a call. We do have the last webinar of this series in a few weeks' time, I think in 3 weeks' time. So more than welcome to join for that one as well on the 3rd of July. Thanks again for joining, and we'll speak to you soon.